So just a little bit of context. For a long time, obviously, we were subsistence farmers, and then we've had several industrial revolutions over time. We are now on the precipice of the fourth industrial revolution. Pretty significant impact on our workforce, our global workforce. What has been consistent for each of these industrial revolutions for success is human ingenuity, human creativity, and for us to create opportunities. And I am firmly a believer in an optimistic sort of growth mindset that we will always find enough work for people to do. It is our responsibility, coming from the center of the universe here, Silicon Valley, that it's our responsibility to sort of lead that transition for certainly the United States, the global workforce, into that new state where work is very, very different. One of the ways work is very different is sort of grounded in Internet of Things, right? The cyber-physical system, the coming together of these two worlds. Certainly I don't need to tell you about this, but this puts us in technology in a good place because we understand this. We understand the impact that this has on jobs. And how IoT is displacing a lot of traditional sort of blue-collar, high school education type of jobs. And that is creating a pretty significant divide and is really an opportunity for us to sort of step up and help bridge this gap and bring more people along. Just a quick case study of tech, right? So in this 25-year period, we saw a real shift in how the economy, sort of major economic forces happen in the United States and in the world. It's fantastic for shareholders, but there's a pretty significant impact on workers, right? So in this 25 years, about the same amount of revenue, and about 10x less number of employees, right? So a really different type of work and a really different type of worker, right? So if you have an iPhone, you can turn it over and it says, remember what it says? Manufactured in, designed in Cupertino, manufactured in China or something like that, or designed in California, manufactured in China. So it's a great example of these two different economies, right? Manufacturing economy, the creative economy. And the creative economy, there's a lot more spoils, there's a lot more wealth that's generated, but for a much fewer number of people and a really different type of person, right? And maybe that was okay for a while when tech was smaller, but as IoT gets into everything that we do, every device, every Roomba, everything in the world, right, is going to have some IoT system in it, that cyber-physical system. There's going to be this incredible demand for engineering skills and just not enough people to meet that demand. So this model won't hold moving forward. We won't be able to generate this amount of revenue and this amount of market capitalization with this few number of people moving forward. We'll need to expand this number, this 137,000 employees. Just for comparison, this is these two numbers, 1.2 million employees and 37 million employees. That is the entire production supply chain, right? So that's everybody who's making a spark plug and making tires and assembling them, everything to the point of sale. So this causes a challenge for us, right? We already know, right, this is not new information, that 1% of the global population controls 50% of global wealth and 50% of the global population has 1% of the wealth. That's not new information at all. We know that rising inequality, wealth disparity is a significant problem, but it affects all of us, right? Because societies that have the greatest wealth disparity also have the greatest instability, right? You can see here more violence, more people in prison, more obesity, lower life expectancy, lower trust in government systems and institutions, things like that. Inequality is rising in all countries, even those that have experienced rapid growth and a drop in the overall percentage of people living in poverty, right? So this is something, again, the mission of your tech company, my tech company is make the world a better place and improve people's lives, right? We're in tech because we have the power to make the world a better place, and we're super excited. We're gonna, use our passion and our energy to help society, and so I feel a tremendous responsibility, a personal responsibility, to do what we can to. To really further that mission. And I feel like I can do that in my role as the head of talent and learning at SAP, which is a major tech company, as we're looking at projecting out the talent needs for the future, the next 5-7 years, I know how many engineers I'm going to need in which countries, and I know how many engineers are coming online. And there's not enough, right? And I know the staffing needs for most of the other companies in the world, major sort of players. And there's not enough people, right? So there's a tremendous concern that we need to do more to sort of help fill that gap, right? We know that, there's a lot of very exciting technology coming online and great opportunities with that technology, but there's also a lot of disruption. Again, I'm very optimistic that we can work our way through it, but I feel like we need to do more to smooth that out, right? So as we look at the impact that technology has. So driver is the highest self-identified job in the United States, right? So this includes not just 18-wheeler drivers, long-haul trucks. This includes taxi drivers, Ubers, school bus drivers, city transit drivers, private limousines, right? So driver is the highest self-identified job. There's an opportunity here as this technology comes online to think about retraining and to think about what is the education that is best for these types of workers. And one of the things that I think about in my role is what is that cutoff point? What is the tipping point when you can take talent and transition them to something new? And when is the point where you say this particular type of talent is best to learn not programming skills, but entrepreneurial skills, because they're going to need to do a little bit more pulling themselves up and figuring something out, because we as a society may not be able to create enough jobs for them, right? So how can we help these different folks? A quick story, my mother, when I was a little kid, I grew up in the 70s in Sacramento Valley, and she was a bookkeeper at a local travel agency. And the local travel agency was in the mall, Davis Time for Travel, and all of the moms worked there, and that was back in the day, if anybody can remember, where you had to make an appointment to get a paper ticket to go from San Francisco to Frankfurt, and that was what travel agents did. So certainly a huge change in the travel industry, companies like Expedia and Travelocity and Priceline and things like that. So the travel industry saw a huge increase, but travel agents, right, we saw a huge decline, about a 40% decline from the peak in 2000 to today of that type of job. So people who were travel agents, right, those jobs were all over the United States, in every little mall here and there, and they were great middle-class jobs, high school education jobs, and now the industry is doing great, but really different type of job in a really different location, right? So no longer spread out all over the country equally, right? Sort of concentrated in tech hubs and different types of companies. So my mom did fine. She was a bookkeeper, and she just went and became a bookkeeper at another little business in town. But not everybody sort of has that resilience, depending on the type of skills that they have. And what is our responsibility to sort of think about and plan for the job changes that are happening across the country. So this study it's a 2013 Oxford University study, and it was praised when it came out for being both incredibly visionary and very criticized as an alarmist. So it's probably something in between as we look at the different jobs that are likely to go away. And we see the same pattern for every sort of wave of industrial revolution. The jobs that are most likely to be eliminated are the ones that are the highest in physical skills and the lowest in cognition, right? There's also other research that 83% of people who are earning $20 an hour or less, their jobs are likely to be eliminated in the next 5 years due to automation, right? The jobs that are least likely to be eliminated or the most safe are the ones that have a high amount of human skills. What is uniquely human, right? What can't be automated, what can't be outsourced, what can't go online. And things that have a high amount of human manipulation, creativity, social perception, things like that, right? We'll see a very significant increase in psychologists, human resources, people that are helping others cope with change, right? Do you have a thought?
She just nudged me because we're both human resources.
There you go. Job security. You could probably tell just by reading the news that we are at the lowest levels of unemployment in a while, but the highest levels of anxiety, right? So we can sense that. People are doing well, but maybe underemployed and nervous. Our economy, and if we look across a host of industries, is really in badly need of workers skilled in computer science, right? There are 500,000 jobs going unfilled now, and in a few years it's estimated that nearly a third of all computer science related jobs will be left unfilled. We graduate in the United States about 43,000 computer science graduates a year, and a tenth of all new jobs are ones that haven't yet been created. So we're looking for people for occupations that haven't yet even been designed, right? So another study that if you started a 4-year computer science degree today, by the time you graduate in 4 years from now, your freshman content is no longer valid. So incredible rate of change. And really the best thing that we can do for people is help them focus on fundamental human skills: resilience, creativity, innovation, social perception, cross-cultural awareness. These are really what is significantly human and can't be at risk of automation and outsourcing. So some other stats that should worry us. We're not in good shape globally, right? These are the 34 market economies that make up the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And you can see that, for example, Japan always comes out in the worst spot in this because they're a significantly high aging population. And also, the increased life expectancy is making it a challenge in a lot of countries as we try to transition to something that is new. People are less comfortable as they get older transitioning to something that is really, really new. If you're born today in North America, there's a 50% chance of living to 105. If you're born today in Japan, there's a 50% chance of living to 110. So how do we think about preparing the future workforce when our careers will be 50, 60 years long, right? And what is the education that you need to give you that foundation of resilience and fundamental human skills to be prepared for a very, very long duration of change? So this is 16 to 65-year-olds, but what about our kids, right? Fundamentally, I'm an educator. So given what we know about the future of technology and how essential computer skills are to our economy, it seems pretty logical that understanding the algorithms and the applications and the internet is going to be essential for our kids' health, their economic abilities to sustain themselves in the workforce. And it's probably moving forward just as important as understanding photosynthesis and the digestive system and electricity, right? So we need to really engage with our school systems to understand how we can create the workforce of the future. Similarly, when I talked about before, that there's sort of this threshold of when you can teach people things that are brand new and then when it's time for them to learn entrepreneurial skills to create something new on their own. Because of the talent needs that are coming online across all of these countries and all of our companies, we can see a very significant demand for certain skills and not enough graduates coming online across all of our countries that can meet that demand. So we have to dig deep across all of our companies and dig into the K through 12 system to make sure that it's preparing the workforce of the future 10, 20, 30 years out. So what's a super bummer, now we're going to get into this stuff, it's all just a huge bummer. So 90% of parents want their kids to learn computer science, but only 40% of schools across the country teach it. And what's awesome is that kids that take computer science really enjoy it, right? Schools that have computer science and engineering, the kids are excited about that. So parents want them to learn it. Kids want to learn it. Tech companies, all companies are desperate for these graduates to have it. We don't have enough graduates now, but I'm not thinking about today. I'm thinking about 10, 20 years out. So that's why I'm focusing on this population to get them ready. And we see a very significant disconnect in the coming years. This is not new information, right? Everybody knows that a lifetime earning of a college graduate is significantly higher than a high school graduate, right? 20x is your lifetime earnings as a college graduate, but also as a computer science graduate, it's 40% higher than the average of all other degrees combined, right? And so computing jobs are the #1 source of wage growth in the United States, in every industry, in every state, and they're projected to grow at twice the rate of all other jobs combined. Again, there's only 43,000 computer science grads that come online a year in the United States. So states that invest in computer science education really reap the economic benefit as well. It's not just at a personal level, it's at a state level. So there's only 10 states, and California isn't one of them, that have K through 12 computer science and education standards. In 2017, those 10 states were 9% more likely than states without K through 12 computer science standards to see unemployment fall. So this was original. So in the US, I think we all sort of know this intuitively, that governments and corporations change at a really different rate, right? So this chart shows the rate of change of technology, is the blue one here, and then the rate of change of public policy in alignment to that. So what I am really challenged to do and would love to put out the challenge to others too is see what we can do to sort of close this gap, this change gap. Can we look at other sources of computer science education to get more people engaged in this solution? I am also a firm believer that perhaps we can do more in our HR departments and our hiring to meet people halfway or meet people a little closer to where they are, right? This is just a quick snapshot of Silicon Valley's community college system, right? So some basic facts about the California community colleges. 2.1 million students are enrolled in California community colleges. They are the nation's largest institution of higher education. 114 schools. They are, across California, 67% ethnically diverse, and 53% female. 30% of all 16 to 24-year-olds in the state of California are enrolled in a California community college. 30% of every kid, 16 to 24. So that's across the state. But here in Silicon Valley, we have 17 colleges, 263,000 students, and 70,000 of them are in STEM. They are 71% diverse here in Silicon Valley. But what's super cool, I think, is that 30% of the grads from all UCs are California Community College transfers. And 51% of the grads of all CSUs are California Community College transfers, right? 48% of all STEM graduates from all UC schools, UCLA, UC Berkeley, are California Community College transfers. Almost 50% of every engineer that graduates started in a California Community College school, right? So as we look to broadening our pool of people that we're recruiting from and helping more people sort of move forward, I'd like to challenge us all in tech to think about where we're recruiting from and who we're looking for as we pull people into the workforce of the future. So there are a ton of benefits to California Community College schools, kids. And I should also say that it's really tough to transfer. Only 4% of the kids that are enrolled, so 4% of the 2.1 million students transfer to a four-year school. It's really hard. And so you get somebody who's been through the system and come out, then that person is pretty resilient and smart and determined. And so those are also great characteristics to be looking for as we look to the future of the talent. And let me also tell you a reason why I am super bullish about this system is I'm a product of it. So I have a confession to make. This is why I'm super motivated about this. So I kind of like barely graduated high school and went to the local community college. I grew up in Sacramento Valley, so I went to American River College in Sacramento. And it was there that I was diagnosed as dyslexic and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder, which my high school didn't recognize. They just thought I couldn't sit still, and every day I got wiggly and they would just send me out to run the track. And so I was a super athlete, but I really didn't learn a lot. And so they figured this out at the community college, and they gave me the resources that we need. So I went from sort of D's to A's, transferred to UC Berkeley on an academic scholarship, and then a master's at Stanford on an academic scholarship. So what does this have to do with the Internet of Things and the automation of jobs in the future of workforce? It's really about opening our eyes to an alternative path and opening our minds to what needs to happen if we're going to have a strong economy and a just society, right? If we're trying to make a difference about wealth disparity and a stable society, it's about inclusion, right? It's including all sorts of people from all kinds of backgrounds in that future because there's going to be a lot of disruption of a certain type of person. And we could do a lot more in tech to include those people. I heard the term techlash for the first time I was reading The Economist maybe 3 weeks ago. And it said there's a techlash coming against Silicon Valley, by Washington. And heard that for the first time, and I was physically shaking. So I think we could do more, right? I mean, I'm a Silicon Valley person. I said, Berkeley, Stanford, I'm like here. This is my world. And we could do more to help people in other parts of the country to participate in the future of work because we're going to need everybody, right? So you guys are doing a tremendous amount already. So I'm not here to preach to you and tell you that you should do something different because you are absolutely a role model in reaching out. You have a tremendous volunteer culture. I was doing some research about you, and you have this great partnership with Goodwill, which I did not know, is the largest workforce development nonprofit in the country. And you've pledged $10 million and 1,000 Google volunteers to create opportunities for 1.2 million youth, formerly incarcerated and displaced workers and veterans, to give them digital skills to participate in the future of work at the 156 Goodwill stores across the country. So that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So certainly applaud these efforts. But there's so many more things that we as a tech community, and we who are all sitting pretty with our great degrees and our wonderful jobs and our great future, there's a lot more that we can do to bring a more inclusive view into the talent that we need. So it's really about being open-minded to all kinds of talent and all kinds of backgrounds, right? Look for those scrappy people that had to pull themselves up and do something the hard way, because maybe they've got some cool skills that we could all benefit from. Encourage students of all ages to, it's never too late to learn something new and to dig deep and try and do something different. And then my strongest call to action is really around lobbying for K through 12 computer science education. And this is, even if you don't have kids, right, this is about doing what's right for the community and the future of work, because we all want to live in a just society and in a place that sort of closes that wealth divide, so that we can have a safer and more harmonious environment to live in. So there are interesting things that can be done. It's not just around volunteering at a school, but people who are working in schools, they know that they have a significant challenge, right? It's not just going to the school and saying, well, why don't you just put through a computer science standards. They know that they should. Why don't you just hire computer science teachers? They know that they should. They cannot recruit computer science teachers at the rate at which school districts can pay, right? If you have those skills, you're going to go to a place like your company or mine or a lot of others. So what can we do to sponsor a teacher, pay for a teaching role? Maybe 5 engineers get together and they all work a 4-10 schedule, and everybody rotates and actually teaches a class. There are things that we can do. You can adopt a school. You can adopt, just like a chaired professorship at a university, sponsor the computer science department at a school, things like that. So there's a lot that can be done to get creative. I've been talking with different people at the national level around creating social sabbatical programs for employees, tech employees, to go and volunteer for 3 months in a government organization, right? There's more that we can do to make our presence felt. This is just it's not just good for schools, it's good for us. So this is a quote from a Google employee about how this really changed his life. So I found this quote on the code.org site. So I was super excited to see a colleague of yours who was making such a great impact. And I want to leave you with some links of things that you can go and check out about ways to help. So, thoughts, questions, feedback, ideas, reactions, anything? HR people, marketing people? Yes, please.
You mentioned elementary school education and then the community college scene, but I also keep hearing that applying to schools is getting so challenging, and kids have a lot of anxiety around it. So is it also that we have to increase the number of 4-year programs, or is it really earlier than that?
It's earlier than that. I mean, there is stress and anxiety in all these levels, and a lot that we could do to make people feel that a lot of different paths are worthy, right? And when I have 4 kids, what I keep telling when I go talk to schools, there's a lot of second chances in this country, right? You're going to have a long career, right? You're going to work for 50 years. There is nobody saying in their right mind that you have to do X, Y, Z in 4 years, right? Explore, take risks, learn new things, go to culinary school, change your mind, do this for 10 years, go get another degree, do something else for 5 years, get a different degree, stack a bunch of micro-credentials. There's lots of different ways to get to a really satisfying, joyful life. There's not one path. So it kind of goes back to your point. I'm trying to encourage HR peers to back off a little bit from it must be this university, it must be this degree. Because I think there's enough research and data now that says there's not a direct correlation between this university and this degree with high productivity and high success. You can get there in lots of different ways. And sometimes the circuitous path is what creates a really interesting colleague and a really innovative perspective. So my advice and encouragement to schools is to back off on the stress and encourage concepts of lifelong learning and joy and internal motivation for a long journey of learning and discovery, right? And because if we don't have that from within, we're going to be stuck. We maybe have a great degree that lasts for 20 years, but what about the next 30 that you are still working, right?
You touched on it a little bit as you talked about the statistics around community colleges in California, but I'm wondering if you have any research or thoughts on, as we're working to kind of reskill or skill the future in computer science and tech, what about the intersectionality of making sure that there's still that diverse workforce coming up with that? I know that's a hot topic right now. Do you have a diverse workforce in tech? And we're seeing that there's gaps in gender or different ethnic groups. So have you done any research into how, you can skill the future for these needed gaps, but also ensure that you're bringing up a more representative sample of workers as well?
Yeah, well, that's why I talked about the diversity in the California community college system. It's 53% female and 71% non-white. So these are great opportunities to find diverse talent. And that's incredibly important. As we think about the role of technology in our lives moving forward, we can sort of project out, Internet of Things and how technology is in everything. Do you want the people who are making technology decisions to have a really consistent sort of frame of reference? Or do you want that? I want the people who are making technology decisions to have a very broad background. The often quoted example I didn't make up was about self-driving cars. That if a self-driving car has an unavoidable collision, and there's a driver in the car, and the self-driving car notices that there's 4 pedestrians on the sidewalk or whatever, and a collision is absolutely unavoidable. Does the car make the decision to save the driver who bought the car, or or save the pedestrians? 4. What is the right decision for society? What's the right decision for the person who said, well, I bought that car, you choose me, right? It's my car. Or I don't know. So that's an often quoted example of, well, who's making that decision? The car, okay. Well, who programmed the car, right? Who hired that programmer of that car? What do all of the cars what decision would all those cars make? Is that the right decision? What is right in that situation, right? What is just? I personally would like to have a lot of diversity in the room when the engineers are having a conversation about what that car should do in that decision, in that circumstance. So I think it's imperative that we have diversity in the new forms of technology moving forward, so that we have a greater representative viewpoint in these really interesting sort of ethical conversations that need to happen. Yeah, please.
So there's there's a lot of companies now with massive online classes,
Yeah,
Udacity
sure.
or Coursera.
Sure.
So there must be a lot of students passing through that, and it's a question for you and probably some people in the audience. Are those students successful? Have they learned? Can they use those skills in a business workplace today?
Yeah. Well, I might get this a little bit wrong, but it's pretty close. I think 80% of the people that are taking MOOCs already have undergraduate degrees. There's about a 5% completion rate for people who start classes to complete them. The number one class on Coursera is How to Learn. So kind of goes back to, what is the most important thing for us to know? It's how to learn. You need to learn, you need to learn to unlearn, you need to learn to relearn, you need to prepare yourself for a 50, 60-year career, because we're all living to 105, of constant change, right? Retiring early might be 70, right? So how do we get ourselves in a mental space as a society of constant learning and constant change, and being okay with that, and having that not be an anxiety-producing experience, but a joyful experience, a great opportunity. So yeah, there's a lot of people that are experiencing those classes, and I think they're great. We do them in our company, or you do them at yours. So it's interesting. I mean, I think that we should be backing off on the pressure to have the best degree from the best school and all that, and be more open and accepting to diverse paths, like stackable micro-credentials. That's great. There's lots of ways, going to a code school, going to a coding boot camp, there's lots of ways to get really practical experience that is more open to diverse backgrounds.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in today's world at big tech companies, do you think, suppose a student, like a community college student, did complete a Coursera course, do you think that they're given due consideration by the hiring team, or do you think there's still kind of an elitism towards prestigious universities? And what can companies like Google and SAP do to fix that?
Yeah, there's still a safety to choosing someone that has a 4-year degree. My perspective is that you should be able to prove your experience. So whether you have a fancy degree from a 4-year school, or you have a bunch of stackable micro certificates on top of a community college associate's degree, either way, you need to prove to me what you know, right? As a hiring manager, what can you do? So, more of a portfolio approach to the hiring process, where we're talking about actual work, right? Tell me about a time when you actually did something, right? Show me an example. It's a great, easy shortcut to say, what school did you go to? Because we all know the vetting process that goes through for those things. But as the demand for workers increases in certain roles, we will need to expand our acceptance of alternate paths to education for those particular roles, because the university system just can't produce them and bring them online as fast as they're needed across all of our industries. So what we can do, your question is what can we specifically do? We can step back, have a conversation as an executive team around, what are we actually trying to accomplish? What is our strategy? What are our goals? Can we achieve these goals by having a broader perspective to talent, and how that talent sort of came up in the system? So I think it really starts by us as companies sort of looking deep into ourselves and saying, what are we actually trying to accomplish here, and what are the different ways that we can accomplish those goals? Yeah, cool, hi.
I haven't seen any information on this, but one way I would imagine we could increase the incoming pool of talent is for large companies like Google and others to put money behind some of these schools, not for the reliance to be solely on the government to
Right.
support these schools. But I've not seen, or maybe they're just done quietly, but There was a time when I expected that there would be Google U,
Yeah,
and it was a brick and mortar school that you could matriculate into from any high school, and it met all the standards, et cetera, but the money came from within. Is that being thought about or done in any way? I'm just not aware of it.
I don't know any plans about Google U. That's that's not anything I would have awareness of.
Did you know that, just confirming, Google opened Howard West University to train coders, so that was the first move in the last year, I think.
That's what I was wondering, yes. And
Yeah.
I know some companies that have MBA programs that the company pays for, but they're full programs. And that's where
Yeah.
I could see that we could expand our capacity.
Yeah,
Easy.
well, yeah, so many companies do this. SAP does also. We sponsor 5 different high schools across North America. That's a partnership between the company, a high school, and a local community college. So it's a 6-year high school. At the end of 6 years, you graduate with a high school diploma, an associate's degree in computer science, and practical hands-on experience. So it's like an apprenticeship program. It's this very close collaboration. We have one in Oakland, there's one in New York, there's one in Canada. So yeah. Other companies do that too. It's a great sort of first step to making a huge difference. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. This is very relevant and eye-opening. So you mentioned earlier in your talk skills for children to have. I don't know if those children are all people in terms of this learning path. And you mentioned resilience, cross-cultural awareness, creativity. What were the other sort of essential things to learn?
Fundamental human skills. So creativity, innovation, social perception. The World Economic Forum has a list of 16 of them. I can send you the list and the link. Emotional intelligence, empathy, creativity, active listening skills, leadership skills. You have fundamental numeracy, fundamental writing, fundamental communication. But if you look at the list of 16 skills from the World Economic Forum, what really jumps out is how many are in human-to-human perception. Yeah, that's what's really distinctive and different and exciting to see.
Well, thank you, Ms. Dearborn. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Let's give one more round of applause.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.